guys, so today we have a episode of our podcast slash video of Dan and myself talking about the separation between RDX Works and the foundation, and what the sort of like thoughts behind that is, and the plan of attack with that sort of more separate entity. I think that sort of a little bit of history would be good to talk about just at the top end. So originally, RDX Works was founded a long time before the establishment of the public network, and it was founded as a for-profit company, which raised some equity investment from a number of VCs in London and Europe, including people like Maven 11 and Local Globe, who are some of sort of the leading investors in the traditional space and also in the crypto space. Maven 11 is doing incredibly well these days as well. And the sort of the way that this was structured is that before RDX Works was founded, Dan did a lot of the research and the building of the Radix protocol himself for sort of a very long period of time. Anyone who's read sort of the Forbes article will sort of understand how much blood, sweat, and tears went into that. He literally had to sort of sell his house and move to a much smaller place, remortgage. It has been a sort of a labor of love over many, many years to get the technology to the place that it could become a public ledger in the first place. And when RDX Works was founded, the idea was that there would be a foundation, and that the foundation would be responsible for making sure that the public ledger remained as a public good. And like many layer one protocols, we realized that that separation was necessary because when you're managing a public good, you need to manage all stakeholders. But if you have a for-profit company with shareholders, that for-profit company has to make sure that it's able to make profit, has to make sure that it's able to return money to shareholders. Now, one of the first things that happened when RDX Works was founded is the allocation of tokens that was attributable to Dan, and then the team, as the team grew, went into RDX Works, and RDX Works owns that as a treasury of the company, and that's to align RDX Works with the success of the public ledger, and then once we'd founded the public ledger, that was actually issued by the foundation or a subsidiary of the foundation, Radix Tokens Jersey, under the purview of the Jersey regulator. And the issuance of the tokens then got split according to the starting token economics. And a bunch of the tokens were put on the foundation side, and some tokens were put in RDX Works. And then RDX Works grew like a normal for-profit company, building a team, paying salaries, and basically the main thing that it was doing was continuing to build the technology stack on contract to the foundation from that point forwards. The foundation was set up with governance from the day one. So while Dan and myself were directors of the foundation, the main entity that held sort of the token treasury that decided spending and all this kind of stuff was based in Jersey, Radix Tokens Jersey, and that from the get-go had 5 directors. So 3 Jersey local directors, Andy Jarrett, Lindsay Bracegrail, and James, and then Dan and myself. And these directors have to agree in majority for any decision to be made. So essentially, the majority of decisions are decided by this Jersey board that we'd set up as an independent to oversee things like the nature of the contracting relationship between RDX Works and Radix Tokens Jersey, and make sure that it was always done at arm's length. It was always done at fair value. There was a lot of work that was done on making sure that everything was done at fair value. We got independent valuations done on sort of our charging rates and all this kind of stuff. And until the Radix platform was live, the only thing that RDX Works was really ever doing was building the technology that Radix Tokens Jersey asked it to. It was going, this is the next thing that needs to happen. This is the next thing that needs to be built, and then RDX Works would then go and do that. And it did a lot of other things on contract as well, such as marketing, such as community management, such as website building and stuff like that. But everything was ultimately decided by this board of directors in Jersey. And sort of the governance and oversight process that was started off was always done as a separation. And ultimately, Andy Jarrett became CEO of Radix Tokens Jersey, and he takes a lead on all things that happen on that side of things. However, once the technology had been delivered, when we got to Babylon, and the sort of the first functionality that was really necessary for a public ledger to be successful, we now had a technology stack that was better than anything else in the industry, and just had this incredible amount of opportunity. And what we were seeing is that while we had sort of been focusing on building a developer community, building a developer ecosystem, all this kind of stuff, there was a lot of things that we were starting to see were difficult to pull off for a small community of developers. And so RDX Works started to look at, well, ultimately, if we just deliver the technology and we just market the technology, it isn't going to be maximally successful. For a technology to be maximally successful, it has to be adopted. And we were continually seeing these opportunities come up that we were sort of very much trying to milestone or like highlight for the community with things like the Scripto challenges, replicating functionality within the Ethereum ecosystem, talking about things that were possible with the technology stack now that it had been created. And we saw a lot of sort of great teams come along, like Caviar 9, like Aussie Swap, like Surge, like Trove, like AlphaDex, like DeFi Plaza, like Astralescent, like Delphi Bets, like RNS, the domain name service, and a lot of like really cool product functionality, like sort of services functionality, like Radix API and all the things that Nelly does, the chart, Radix charts, all of the Node Runner community that's done an incredible job of building up this sort of like grassroots effort of building and deploying nodes. And so that was like a great starting point. But as we matured, we were starting to have these conversations with governments. We were starting to have conversations with large enterprises. We were starting to have conversations with big businesses that were going, we really want to build and deploy on top of these public ledgers. And we actually ended up not doing a lot of things. Like we would turn down tenders, we would turn down bids and things like this, because we were like, well, we're just focusing on delivering the technology. And there seems to be this conflict of interests between RDX and Radix Tokens Jersey, when Dan and myself essentially having to wear both hats. So we turned down a tender offer to work with the London Stock Exchange for one of the things that they were doing. We turned down some stuff with Visa MasterCard, mainly because it was private ledgers, and our view was public ledgers is everything, and so we have to make sure that the public ledger is the thing that people are building on. But there is also this sort of like counter argument that you can talk about in terms of just getting technology deployed and adopted makes the technology more pervasive, makes the technology more sticky. So once Babylon had gone,
there's an important point that you just said, right?
Yeah.
Like your position is public ledgers are everything, whereas my position is slightly different as well, right? Like I was talking about this in the Telegram yesterday. Over a decade ago, I made a presentation somewhere, I can't remember where it was, about the kind of convergence of private and public, right? Yeah. So you'll have like a public network at some point in the future, and then industry will have private satellite networks, kind of like L2s these days, right?
Yeah.
And which will just dip their feet in. And that also has a lot of opportunity, right? In terms of a tech stack deployment. Obviously from a for-profit entity such as RDX Works, you don't really care about the private stuff, right? Because all the value is in the public. But from a foundational point of view, you want the technology to be adopted everywhere, right? As much as possible in private, public, federated, everywhere you can. So it's just one small example of where, the alignment, while broadly aligned, there's these little just bits there that start to diverge a little bit, right?
Yeah, no, I actually agree with you. Like there's been several points in the sort of the Radix platform's history where we have had this debate about sort of whether or not it's enterprise or public ledger. I
But
think
it's much harder for a for-profit entity to make money in private network deployments because the guys that you're trying to sell them to basically don't want to pay you a lot of money for it, right?
Yeah, I think that the conclusion that we came to was essentially that there's two things that are important when you're building a startup. The first is focus, and the second is sort of allocation of resources, and those are related, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we RDX, having its treasury of XRD tokens is going, well, our best alignment is the success of the public ledger, because if we make the public ledger successful, then those tokens could be worth billions. And if we make private enterprise implementation successful, you're probably not going to be having any kind of anywhere near the scale of value that you can get from a public deployment. What's been really interesting in the last few years, in the years that we were talking about, 2017, 2018, R3 Corda and things like that were coming out, and it seemed like that there was a lot of legs. But what we're now seeing is that the difficulty, the coordination problem between enterprises, where you go, well, I'm JP Morgan, so you're going to use my platform, or I'm Goldman Sachs and you're going to use my platform, and I'm IBM, so I'm going to try and sell it to everyone, and so it doesn't really do anything well. And so you get this thing that means that as the public ledger increases in its value, increases in its security, increases in its adoption, more and more enterprises just go, well, we have this neutral piece of this platform technology that lots and lots and lots of capital is integrating into, so why wouldn't we just integrate against the public ledger? I think so that was ultimately the decision back in 2017, 2018, is we said it's absolutely public ledger. Public ledger has to be successful for everything else to be successful. So we're going to focus on making sure the public ledger is successful.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to that though, right? Like there's a lot of things that they can't integrate. Like, they have data privacy, they have to adhere to regulations, all this kind of stuff, right? So a lot of large enterprises, especially financial industry, right? They need some private element to that. But there is a lot of value in the public network. If the public network is growing, there's customers there, there's value there, and they obviously want to tap into that from a business point of view. So I think what I would say is that we're kind of doing a pincer move, right? If you want to think about it that way, right? So RDX Works is focusing on public network because that's where RDX Works can make most profit, right? So the mandate there is grow the public network as much as possible. That's profitable. Public network grows, that's also good for the foundation and its treasury, right? And then the foundation can be a little bit more liberal in where it's trying to position the network in these kind of private, federated, whatever, right? And if you can catch both, then you're in a mega strong position.
Yeah, agreed. So the foundation's view is adoption of technology.
Yes.
How do we make sure that this technology is adopted everywhere? RDX's view is how do we leverage this technology to generate viable businesses? And so the viable businesses are ones that are most likely to create an outsized return from the expertise that RDX Works has, which is essentially we're entirely a Radix platform. Everything that we've done, we understand this platform incredibly deeply, far more than anyone else in the world. And as a result of that, building and sort of proof of concepts and applications on top of the network, we're able to do at a much higher quality at a much faster rate than we could anywhere else, at much greater security, because of all of the things that we built in. We built all of these things not just because we thought that they were good ideas. We built them because we saw the need for every single thing that we've put into Radix for viable businesses to be built on public ledgers. And so once Babylon was delivered, we started this process of going, well, now there seems to be this sort of like separation. There's more of a separation of responsibilities and focuses, where now RDX Works is going, okay, now we have this technology. We still have to deliver a bunch of stuff, but the stuff is like less critical than what Babylon was, right? You need to do some updates to the Radix engine, you need to do some updates to Scripto, you need to do some updates to the wallet and all that kind of stuff. But you have the basis of the technology. And now you're going, well, for the public ledger to be successful, it has to be adopted. It has to be adopted by money users. Like there has to be TVL, there has to be real businesses integrating it into real parts of their of their business, and there has to be incredible startups that are choosing to build on top of this. And most of these incredible startups, most of great founders, don't care so much about technology. They're much more like, where's the opportunity? Like, show me the simplest path to achieving this opportunity, and that again requires users' capital. And so the shift started where RDX was going, well, how can we generate adoption on the layer one, rather than just how can we generate technology, but what are the things that we can build? And that's where things like Anthic have come about. And this is where the sort of conversations that we've been having with market makers, that we've been having with institutions like Brevin Howard, that we've been having with other entities, going, well, here's a use case for public ledger that we uniquely have access to the enterprises that can give us the insights that can say this is what the business requirements for that technology is, right? Like the key insights for things like Anthic and Flash Liquidity came from talking with market makers about all of the problems they have for market making on public ledgers for DEXs. And similarly, we have other products that are in the works that are coming again from the business requirements, and then RDX's ability to map those business requirements to public ledger deployment, specifically on Radix, where we're able to at the same time go, here's all your business requirements, and here's why Radix is the best possible place for you to deploy this thing that you need, because Radix uniquely allows you to do all of this stuff that you just can't do on any other public ledger. And yes, the TVL might be smaller than it is on Ethereum, but it's a lot safer, it's a lot more scalable, and it creates these user experiences that are also applicable to enterprise. For example, the auth stack mapping to the auth requirements of a company that you just can't do on any other platform. And as soon as we started to have those conversations and they started to get real, we were like, okay, well, now it feels like the wearing of the two hats feels a little bit more problematic, because the wearing of the two hats up to that point is RDX was just delivery of technology, delivery of community, delivery of developer tools. And now you're going, well, for the public ledger to be successful, it doesn't matter how good the tech is. For the public ledger to be successful, there has to be adoption. And for there to be adoption, you can either go, we're going to go entirely retail, or you can say we're going to do retail and we're going to do enterprise. And that's a path that not many other platforms are pursuing. Maybe Avalanche, maybe Ripple, maybe Aptos, but and maybe like Stellar and things like that. But until I'd say this year, most enterprises weren't thinking about it from the point of view of what DeFi functionality can I add. They were just thinking about it from the point of view of how do I create a token that I can pass around between entities that I know. It's only with the success of stablecoins and the success of borrow-lend markets like Aave, and with the success of markets like Uniswap, and the understanding of enterprises of going, well, if I create a token, there has to be secondary market liquidity. How do I create that? That you're starting to see these sort of really interesting enterprises very aggressively going, how do I deploy DeFi into the thing that I want to do on public ledger?
They've all at that point suddenly, right? Like almost overnight. This is what I experienced at EBC. That was also my experience at the AFME Optic conference that I went to. Like very large, banks, institutions, hedge funds, private offices, all of a sudden are just like, how do we use this? This sounds like the this gives us so many opportunities. How do we use it? You go back 2 years ago and you went to that same conference, you just get whatever. It's just.
I think the interesting thing, I think one of the things that's changed it massively has been that in the last 2 years, a lot of these enterprises have actually deployed on top of things like Ethereum, on top of things like Solana.
Yeah.
And they've gone, holy shit, this isn't ready. Like, holy shit, this isn't ready. I cannot build an enterprise system against this stack.
Right, exactly. But then one of the problems is a conversation that I had at AFME with CEO, I'm not sure if I should mention who it is, a CEO of a firm, let's say. I looked at the tech stack that they were looking to prototype, and this kind of suggestions that their teams are working on, and it's like these guys are like 3 years behind, 4 years behind in their thinking, right? And they're building on, for want of a better word, legacy technology, right? Like Ethereum, if you want to be a bit of an ass about it, is legacy technology, right? At this point. And so I was like, look, you guys are just using the wrong stuff, right? You're using this legacy tech with this legacy mindset, and you're never going to be able to build what you really want to build on these stacks because they just aren't far enough along. You want to be looking at the new generation of stuff, right? Like us, Aptos, et cetera, right? They are the guys that are going to, and us, of course, like Radix is going to win, but we've got to be impartial. Those kind of tech stacks, like ours, asset-oriented tech stacks, they are the tech stacks that will enable them to build really what they want to build, and in such a way whereas it is secure, it's atomic, and all these things that they need for those kind of business models. Yeah. And this guy agreed with me. It's just trying to, he's, I guess, trying to steer the same ship in that industry to say, look, we're looking down the wrong road here, and where we're prototyping these things and piloting these things, we need to look at more, next generation stuff, and it's just hitting friction. And I think one of the reasons for that is there's no education there at all. There's no education in that industry. They don't have, us guys who are ahead going into that industry and saying, look, this is wrong. This is what you need to do. And the people from crypto that are going to those events, they're just trying to hard sell their own platforms, and that won't work, right? Just got to go in and give value and educate. And educating isn't just trying to sell something. So. Right. A little bit of a quandary, but you're completely right. And they've been building on the wrong stuff.
And I think that sort of the difference between the idea of something and the implementation of something is a long way removed. And once you start the process of trying to implement, you realize all of the problems that you have, and that starts to then go down the business decision routes where you're going, okay, well, now we know what we're actually looking for. Now we understand what our needs are, because we didn't really understand what our needs were before. And this is why I'm saying DeFi is becoming big, because they're going, shit, it's not just about issuing tokens. Issuing a token without that token being liquid, without that token being composable with other applications, without that token being able to be used as collateral, it's not actually useful. It's not like like you might as well just hold the shares of an illiquid fund. Like it doesn't add anything. And now that's very much being realized. So just bringing it back to sort of RDX versus Foundation, I think like what's clear here is that the Radix Foundation's responsibility is technology advocacy. Like, how do technology advocacy and roadmap definition, like what does this platform as a public ledger require to continually address the most important stakeholders of the platform, and to then continually get that technology adopted? And it doesn't matter who. It could be a charity, it could be a non-for-profit, it could be a government, it could be an enterprise, it could be a startup. It just is about technology advocacy and galvanizing the community and the developer community, and galvanizing everyone that's around the success, the stakeholders who want the success of the public ledger to be as successful as possible. And RDX is one of them. We're one of those people that are being galvanized by this technology and technology advocacy. And then on the other side, RDX's goal, responsibility, is first and foremost continued delivery of the technology that the foundation says, hey, we need this as the next piece of feature of whatever. That's what 95% of the people in RDX are doing and will continue to do. But then there's the second piece of going, what extra things can we build that will make the platform more successful, that are successful as a result of being a business? Not just as a result of being a piece of technology, a tool, but as a result of being a business. And Anthic, the first thing that we've come up with and said, look, we can solve the problem of liquidity of token liquidity on a public ledger, and that's huge. That's a huge problem. Not just for retail, not just for DeFi projects, but also for enterprises going, I'm launching a token. How do I make that token liquid immediately? It's like, wow, here's a solution.
There you go.
And so the RDX's view is going, look, we are 100% aligned with the success of the Radix platform and the token, because we hold a bunch of tokens and we know everything there is to know about the technology. So what can we do actively now to step into that role more and really push successful businesses launching and deploying on top of the Radix network? And you then have to create this separation, because sometimes things are going to be in conflict. Like sometimes some bits and pieces of what RDX creates will end up being in conflict with other applications on top of the Radix public ledger. Because there are only so many types of things you can deliver, and we are delivering on the basis of customer requirements that we're going and gathering, but those customer requirements will sometimes have functionality that overlaps with other things, right? And there's been this whole discussion about sort of the overlap between Anthic and DEXs in the Radix public ledger, and I think that there's a really good path forwards here, where DEXs provide the front ends, they get paid for providing volume to Anthic, and that all works so that they are getting better user experience, better liquidity, and they're still able to use to incentivize liquidity within their own pools and all this kind of stuff. But ultimately, like, the next product or the next thing that's delivered may step on the toes of something that one of the Radix community projects are doing.
And that's a really important point, right? Because if that starts to happen and this change didn't happen, then you would probably get some sentiment where, well, RDX Works is building this, there's another project that's building something similar. There's no point us continuing, because obviously RDX Works' project is going to get priority because Piers is on the board of the foundation, right? Even if that's not true, yeah, you're going to get that sentiment of, well, there's no point us building it anyway because RDX Works is going to get the grant or whatever, right? Those kind of conversations are not healthy. So even though that wouldn't happen, right? If there was a better project out there than what RDX Works was building, then of course the better project would get the treatment if it was, likely to be more successful from a grant point of view. But if we're still continue to wear both the hats, that sentiment would appear in the community, and it would be very damaging and toxic. So there's so many reasons why this separation is necessary, and it's the right time to do it. And some of you might thought it was a surprise, but me and Piers have spoken about this many times over the years,
Many times. We've run at it so many times.
At some point, Piers, I'm going to have to go over to the foundation and run things from there. Yeah, this isn't like a knee-jerk reaction to anything. And this just felt like the right time with the position we're in, the sentiments of the community, Anthic and things coming along. Just like, this is the perfect time to do it now. So let's do it now.
Right. And I think it's sort of one of the things, it's sort of like philosophically, I don't want RDX to be Microsoft, right? Like, what I mean by that is I don't want RDX to be looking at what is being successful on Radix and then just copying it. Like, I'm not interested in competing with the projects that are already in the platform. I'm much more interested in going and saying there's all of these people, potential users that want to come to DeFi, want to come to crypto, want to come to public ledger. how can we get them to do that on Radix?
Mm.
And how can we make sure that there's a profit motive in that? Because if there's no profit motive, you don't have the money to spend on business development. You don't have the money to spend on, sort of getting visibility of these things. You don't actually, like, doing things without a profit motive fundamentally makes a less successful business venture. And for the public ledger to be successful, you want there to be many billion-dollar businesses that are built on top of it. Because
there's another point as well, right? Like, you're saying that you don't want to compete. But if competition in our ecosystem right now is more damaging than it is good, right? We're too small for there to be multiple parties competing over the same or very similar use cases, right? Maybe later when, size of Ethereum plus more TVL, etc., it doesn't really matter so much. But right now, I think it needs to be very, very selected what at least RDX works on, right? The community is going to work on whatever they work on because they're just building businesses. But I think from our point of view, we have to be a bit more responsible, right, about the projects that we do, because heavy competition kills the community at this point rather than nurtures it.
Right. It's like how does everything that RDX does, how do you make sure that it's a net positive?
Yes.
A net additive to the ecosystem.
And then if someone competes with you, Piers, you're just gonna have to suck it up.
I like competition. It makes us look better.
Only if you win.
No, I think that the only way, and this goes back to the whole mission statement of RDX, is to give builders everything they need to reshape the infrastructure of global finance. Like, it's like, to give builders everything they need, like, doesn't just include tools. It includes all of the things like capital, TVL. It includes sort of businesses that are using it as a piece of their fundamental infrastructure. It includes startups that are deciding to build on top of this, high growth startups that are deciding to build on top of this. But we talked a lot about RDX. I think that's clear, right?
Yeah.
So let's move across to the foundation. You're now across at the foundation. What do you see your role going forwards being? Like, how does this separation now allow you to act, and what are you planning?
So obviously the headline mandate is tech, right? Finish the research, any new development, R&D, drive that forward so that it gets to a point where it can be handed over for an implementation. I think that's priority 1, 2, and 3, I think, at this stage, right? But then there's also the other pieces of that, right? Which is, okay, do we need to adjust any of the direction? What is happening in the space, right? Go back 4 or 5 years ago, and almost all the narrative was scalability, trial error, scalability, trial error, right? But I don't believe that carries the same weight behind it in this cycle, right? Because you go and talk to a number of people in the industry, and I would say at least 50% of them are convinced that scale is not a problem anymore. Either that's via L1s or very scalable monolithic chains such as Solana, etc., which with Firedancer, which is going to be out soon. And it seems to have become a bit of a moot topic, which it obviously isn't moot, right? At some point, it's going to be shit. This actually doesn't scale in the way that I thought it did, and the way that I need it to, so that I can, have composability across different applications and different altitudes.
Move a little closer to the microphone. You're beginning.
So yeah, I'm getting all chilled over here. I've got a long day. I'm trying to conserve energy. I'm on a flight to Jersey this evening. At some point, it's going to come back around, right? Maybe that's the next cycle. Yeah, is, oh shit, scalability really is a problem again. So part of what I'll be doing over at the foundation is just keeping my ear to the ground, and okay, is there a shifting of the ground in terms of things that what people are focusing on, right? And is there any slight adjustment we can do in our path forward to capitalize on those current conversations, right? Because it's one thing to build the tech. That's great. But you also need to ensure that people know about the tech that you're building, right? And sometimes you have to go around the mountain a little bit rather than over it to capture some mind share. So obviously the broad direction doesn't change. That's always kind of been the same vision, right? Build the tech, solve the trilemma as such, go for, technological adoption, right? World domination, all that kind of stuff. But sometimes you've just got to navigate a little bit the waters to avoid some rocks or go and pick up some interesting new supplies somewhere. So that's another piece.
Does that mean that you are less bullish on scalability, or you think that scalability is still the most important thing?
It's just realism, right? Of course, scalability is the end game, right? We're going to need. None of the solutions out there are even anywhere near close from a technological point of view to be able to support a network of a size where, say in 10 years, right? And every man and his dog are using some form of crypto. And let's say that Radix or some other chain is, one of the, say, top 5, right? Where all of this volume and traffic is going to, right? That in itself is a huge amount of scale that you need, because, people think about Visa, we just need to support Visa payments, right? But this is DeFi, this is online, there's so many more actions that you can do that you couldn't do before. So if it's not just Visa scale, it's not Visa, it's Visa, MasterCard, Alibaba, Alipay, PayPal, Amazon, all that traffic, right? And then you've got all of the kind of speculation side of things, because that's so much more accessible. Lend, borrow, and God knows what other ideas people come up with in terms of DeFi utility. And then AI, Web3, IoT devices, all these things. Like if a protocol becomes the prime mover, let's say, in the way that TCP/IP did, then you need tens of millions of scalability capacity, and there's nothing out there that can deliver that other than the tech that we have. So still very bullish on scale. It's just that I don't think that everybody is looking at it this cycle. So I'm driving a very hard scalability narrative. Is probably just going to fall on deaf ears right now, because the general sentiment is scale isn't a problem now. It's solved. Next cycle it'll be shit. No, it isn't. Okay, who's got the most scalable thing? Those guys. But that doesn't mean that we can't capitalize on this cycle as well, right? There's a lot of opportunity this cycle too. A bit like a sitcom.
I suppose what I'm driving at is is your primary focus on the foundation side with Radix Labs going to be to continue to run towards Xian as fast as possible,
quick as possible, as quick as possible,
and the logic behind that is essentially, while many in the industry think of scalability as a solved problem, it is not a solved problem.
Yeah, it's not.
And the reason it's not a solved problem is all that's been done is the limitations of the platforms have been pushed slightly higher. You have, you have Solana, which has pushed the limitations of a blockchain throughput higher by centralizing and then optimizing that centralized set of validators, where you have very, very high, very vertically scaled servers, so very, very high requirement servers.
Very optimized code for certain use cases.
Certain use cases. Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's terrible for DeFi. I think this is one of the most funny things that I continually see in the space, is that people are constantly talk about transactional throughput, where they're sending one token from one place to another, and you're like, well, no, that's not the most important thing. I think from when we did RadFi, where we did the research, 75%, 80% of all transactions are composed transactions on public ledger. So you are doing complex actions.
Your transfers mean nothing.
Right. And so Solana's throughput, 65,000 transactions per second, is the marketing number.
Allegedly.
273 swaps per second is the actual
No, it's not. That's wrongly quoted. That is wrongly quoted. So it's 273 swaps a second on the same pool, right? And then the maximum that you can do is 273 swaps a second across a maximum of 4 pools. And then the compute units per block are exhausted, right? So in total, you can do a combined about 1,000 a second on slot, right?
And so you have these limitations that are hidden. And they're hidden because we haven't reached the next level of scale yet. We haven't got to the point where the industry is going, oh shit, that's a problem. And so Xian is absolutely essential for the delivery of a scalable public ledger that is actually able to address the problems that are constantly endemic within the crypto space, but hidden. They're hidden issues of this scalability is not solved. It's just been relaxed a little bit because we're no longer hitting thousands of transactions per second on a regular basis.
I mean, it could become an issue, I think, midway through this bull cycle, right? Because what is crypto right now? It's maybe 3-4% of global populace, right? It's not a huge amount. Some reports say 5%. Okay, whatever, 5%. But if this bull run gets traction, especially if Bitcoin breaks above $100,000, then you will see a bull run like you have never seen before, right? Because that 100,000 is a special number, right? And then you're probably going to start to see large amounts of mass market just on the FOMO, on the hype. It's going to be all over the news. Bitcoin has broken $10,000, yada, 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 all this. $100,000, all this kind of stuff, right? So then perhaps for a short period of time, you have maybe 10% of the global population interacting with cryptocurrency, right? And if that happens quickly, then that additional burst of like double the user base is really going to start to cripple a large number of these networks that can scale. So if this bull run is particularly aggressive, then there is a chance that scalability becomes a topic midway through, right? Oh, shit, actually, we can't get these people in because all the networks are saturated because there's so many more new people coming in, right? Because there isn't a lot of upper capacity left remaining on a lot of these networks. They can maybe, tolerate another 20, 25%. If it doubles it like overnight, literally, problems, big problems.
Yeah. And this is also true of things like Sui. It's also true of things like Aptos. Like it's not just the sort of the previous generation of tech, it's also the current generation of tech.
Yeah.
And so
maybe there's a little bit more headroom, right? But for sure. Not a great deal more.
For sure. I mean, they're definitely more scalable than what came before, definitely.
Right, but if there's an aggressive bull run, then you're going to have an influx of bots with that as well these days, right? Like you didn't have that in some previous cycles, but you're going to have bots everywhere filling that space, trading against these new users that are coming in, right? Newbie users that maybe aren't very educated on crypto, and unfortunately, these bastards are going to try and take advantage of that as much as possible, sandwich attacks and all these things, right? So you're going to see not just an increase of real users, you're going to see a huge increase in bots. And it will be the bots that push it over the edge because they will just consume all available bandwidth to try and extract as much value as possible from these new users entering.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing that's sort of worth saying here is that the architectures of these platforms are intrinsically the problem. Like the way that, even the way that things like Sui has been built still ends up having these sort of limitations that mean that there are these upper limits.
Yeah.
And so
it's still a bound. It's still an upper bound.
Still a bound. And so the goal that you always had in mind, that you always started with, that like from the day one that you were building this, is like, how does this work at the same scale as the internet? How does this work for every single man, woman, and child in the world? And how can you run entire economies on this? How can you run entire industries on this? Now, obviously, that's a very big goal. And we talk a lot about, the big, hairy goals. Obviously, we understand that you don't jump there. You have to win it by increments. You have to win it by first creating a incredible community, then you have to create an incredible community of developers, then you have to create an incredible community of dApps, then you have to start pulling sort of capital in from the outside the crypto sphere, then you have to start pulling industry enterprises in from outside the startup sphere, and then you start to pull in governments as well. And so like you have to win each of these stages. And obviously there's been some trips along the way for Radix, for the Radix platform to be successful in those starting phases. But that doesn't mean that we don't think that, or that you don't think on the foundation side, that fundamentally delivering that initial vision isn't the most important thing. Because if that fails, it doesn't matter how successful everything else is fundamentally limited.
Right. That vision has got to be, the circle's got to be closed on it, right? Here is tech that can scale unbounded, if necessary, right? To hundreds of billions of things using it, right? Ultimately. And that's always been my North Star, I guess, and it still is, right? Doesn't change. And yeah, we've had a few issues along the way and it's taken a bit longer in places, but, sometimes it frustrates me a little when, people are, this is taken forever. It's like, maybe it has taken forever, but it's also taken everybody else forever because nobody else has anything the same, right? So actually we're early because nobody else is pitching this kind of tech anywhere. No one else has deployed it. No one else is running test nets in the same kind of configuration that we are. So yeah, okay. It's taken a long time. I know it, but no one else has got it either, right? Maybe there's somebody in a shed somewhere that does, and they just haven't told anybody about it yet. Fine, that's a possibility. But I don't think. Well, we're still going to be first at the table essentially at this point, and pushing Xian as hard as possible from this point forward. That just wraps that up and makes sure that we are at the table when everybody arrives for dinner.
And so what are the next steps for Xian? What's the plan now?
So obviously the testing is next priority, which had to take a little bit of a backseat over the past few weeks because one, conferences, two, all the foundation RDX Works separation thing, which I've got to go to Jersey today to wrap up some of that stuff. We're going to be there for a couple of days. Once that's done, it's back into just picking up where I left off from the testing that we can do, community stuff. Then for the next, I suppose, big step towards Xian will be the integration of the Radix engine. Once the testing is, the initial test, these tests are going to be somewhat long-lived over a period of months or so. But once that first test is out of the way and successful, then it just becomes a maintenance thing. Then I'm going to switch to Xianificating the Radix engine, if that's such a word, right? And there's quite a bit of work there, but there's also quite a lot of work that's already done for that, because the team have had some kind of foresight on, okay, probably going to need this, these things. So it's not as big a job as it maybe would have been if nobody was thinking about sharding when the Radix engine was built. So that's good. And then that would then give us basically a true prototype of Xian, I guess, right? Because then you have very scalable consensus, and then a Radix engine that can take advantage of that scale. So we could be running OC or Caviar 9 at 10,000 trades a second or something insane, right? And so if the initial Cassandra tests don't convince you, then that most certainly will. And if that doesn't convince you, then just shut up. Yeah. And then probably around that point, there's also going to be work happening to the consensus, the Cassandra consensus underneath, right? Just papers, more work on that, more deep dive, hardening that up. There's so many edge cases still to test with that because it's such a new method of consensus. It's not a small piece of work, but it's more moving bricks kind of work, right? So what I'm hoping to do is maybe engage some of the community to come and help with that. Okay, these are all the things that need testing in the Cassandra consensus. Do you guys want to go and play around with that for a couple of weeks, write some tests, integrate it integration test, whatever, spin up a couple of small networks yourselves, try and break it. If you break it, then we can figure out how to fix it, whatever. To get the community on board with that effort as well, I think that'd be quite nice. And then they also feel a part of the Xian journey, which I think I get the feeling that a lot of them want to be part of that, right? So yeah, those are probably the two biggest things over the next,
so do the scale up tests, public,
bolt Radix engine on
with and then put the Radix engine on top. And then from there, it's a question of hardening, productionizing, testing, auditing,
and then
validating.
At that point, me and you probably have a phone call.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's build this thing out.
Very exciting. And I
obviously, all the community evangelizing as well, right? There's stuff there, getting the word out about what we're building, getting the community excited, getting them involved. Just turn that around as well. Get people excited about us again.
Yeah, for sure. And I think sort of the last point of this is just the foundation's role with the community. So like you're essentially the foundation is the main interface point to the community from this point forwards.
Yeah,
because the foundation represents the
stakeholders, right?
The stakeholders. So does you've been spending a lot of time in the community recently. Is that something that you're expecting to continue?
Yeah, I want to get it quite a lot closer to the community. In the early days, we were quite close to the community then. Obviously, got to step away and focus on things, and the past 4 or 5 years or so, that's not been possible to do. But I think because I'm also going to wear less hats now as well, right? Just in the same way that you are, and wearing less hats means more time. So I can either use that time and push it into some additional development if there's an opportunity there, or I can use that time to rally the community and get everybody aligned on the community side, which is probably going to be the main use of that additional time, that use it that way. And because there's incredible resources in there that we haven't really utilized much for legitimate reasons, but now that I think there's an opportunity to do that, and it also adds credibility if you've got community members helping you to build the tech stack. They're going to be in the code. Oh, this is vaporware. Actually, no, it's not, because I'm part of the community, no association officially whatsoever, and I've done a bunch of these commits. You can see my work in there if you. Oh yeah, another thing is obviously the open sourcing of the current Cassandra prototype in the near future too. So I can obviously bring community members in to help with that if they want to. And yeah, just community management. I think a couple of months. I think that's everybody will be aligned. Everybody will know what's going on. I think there's definitely a bit of time now of just reassurance, I think, right? And helping, again, the more veteran community members understand, okay, what does this actually mean in terms of how things are going to be from this point forward? What changes? What stays the same? But then once that mindset has changed, and it's like, okay, if I want to know this question, I ask Piers. If I want to know this question, I ask Dan, right? Can't ask this question to Piers because he might not know, because he's not in the foundation anymore, and vice versa with me, right? So there's just this bit of transition period as well. So yeah, lots going on.
I mean, ultimately, I think the fact that we are about to do the scale up tests for the Cassandra network is super exciting, and I'm personally really excited to see that come out and then see the next steps towards Xian sort of imminently start. So I think to conclude this call, I hope this is added some clarity for people in terms of the separation, the philosophy behind it, why now, and stay engaged, stay pushing the ecosystem, stay building the applications, because we are both 100% in on this, and like this is it. It's ride or die the whole way.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, if there's a hill I'm going to die on, it's going to be this one. That's damn right.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Thanks, Piers. Thanks to everybody watching. Have a great day. Don't work too hard, but don't work too not hard either.